The massive ship called Galactic Unity moved through the dark space between stars. It was bigger than most cities on Earth, with metal walls that stretched for miles and floors stacked one on top of another like a giant building floating in the void. Inside its halls walked creatures from dozens of different worlds, all heading to the same place for the same reason. They were going to the Centauri Peace Summit, where leaders from across the galaxy would meet to talk about trade and war and the future of their worlds. Lieutenant Jake Harrison sat alone in the corner of the ship's main dining hall, eating his simple meal of rice and vegetables. He looked ordinary compared to the other beings around him. He was not very tall, maybe 5 feet and 10 inches, with brown hair and green eyes. His arms were lean but strong from years of training. He wore the plain green uniform of Earth's military, with only a small flag patch on his shoulder to show where he came from. At the tables around him sat creatures that looked like they came from nightmares or dreams. There were tall blue beings, with 4 arms who could lift a car over their heads. Giant insect-like creatures clicked and buzzed as they ate foods that glowed in the dark. Some aliens had skin like rocks, others had fur like animals, and a few seemed to be made of light itself. Jake kept his head down and focused on his food. He had learned long ago that it was better to stay quiet and watch. His job was simple. He was part of Earth's small security team for this trip. While the diplomats talked and made deals, Jake and 5 other human soldiers were supposed to keep them safe. It was not an exciting job, but it was important. A shadow fell across his table. Jake looked up to see Commander Vexthor standing over him. The alien was huge, almost 7 feet tall and covered in dark green scales that looked harder than armor. His yellow eyes were the size of tennis balls, and when he smiled, Jake could see rows of sharp teeth. Vexthor was from a planet called Draconis Prime, where his people had built an empire by conquering other worlds. "So this is what Earth sends to protect its people," Vexthor said, his voice deep and rough like rocks grinding together, a small soft creature with no claws and no scales. Jake said nothing. He had been warned about Vexthor by Captain Lisa Murphy, his commanding officer. The alien commander liked to start fights and show off his strength. Lisa had told Jake to avoid him if possible. But Vexthor was not done. He reached down and picked up Jake's service rifle, which was sitting on the table next to his meal tray. The weapon looked tiny in the alien's massive clawed hands. "What is this supposed to be?" Vexthor asked, holding the rifle up so other aliens could see it. "It fires metal bullets like weapons from the ancient times. My people stopped using such primitive tools 1,000 years ago." More aliens began to gather around the table. Jake could hear them whispering and laughing. A few took pictures with their various devices. Jake felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he kept his voice calm. "May I have my weapon back, sir?" Jake asked politely. Vexthor laughed, a sound like a dragon roaring. "Weapon? This is a toy for children." He tossed the rifle back onto the table with such force that Jake's water glass fell over. "Tell me, little human, what makes your species think it belongs among the stars? You have no natural armor, no enhanced strength, no energy weapons. Your planet is small and weak. You have been in space for less than 100 years, while my people have ruled the galaxy for 10,000. Jake carefully picked up his rifle and checked it for damage. It seemed fine. He looked up at Vexthor and the crowd of aliens that had gathered around them. Some looked curious, others seemed amused, and a few appeared genuinely interested in hearing his answer. "We belong here because we earned our place," Jake said quietly. "Same as everyone else." This made Vexthor laugh even harder. "Earned your place? Your entire species could not defeat 1 battalion of Draconis warriors. I have personally conquered 17 worlds. I have fought against the crystal beings of Arcturus and the machine armies of the Outer Rim. I have never lost a battle, never retreated, never shown fear." The alien commander began walking around Jake's table like a predator circling its prey. "Look at him," Vexthor said to the crowd. "No cybernetic implants to make him stronger. No genetic modifications to make him faster. No energy shields to protect his soft skin. He is exactly as nature made him, which is to say weak and defenseless." Jake continued eating his meal, though he had lost his appetite. He could feel dozens of alien eyes watching him, waiting to see how he would react. Some of the creatures were recording everything with their devices. By tomorrow, videos of this encounter would probably be playing on news feeds across half the galaxy. A tall, thin alien with purple skin stepped forward. "Is it true that humans still fight wars on their own planet?" she asked in a voice like music. "Some conflicts, yes, ma'am," Jake answered honestly. "And you fight each other with weapons like that?" She pointed at his rifle. "Among other things, yes, ma'am." Vexthor slammed his fist on the table, making all the dishes jump. "They fight each other because they are too primitive to unite under strong leadership. My people learned long ago that strength brings peace. The weak serve the strong, and the strong protect the weak. It is the natural order." "Seems to work." "For your people," Jake said, still not looking up from his meal. "Mock me if you wish, human, but your sarcasm cannot change reality. When danger comes, your species will hide behind others who are truly strong. You will beg for protection from races like mine who have the power to provide it." Jake finished his rice and pushed the tray away. He picked up his rifle and slung it over his shoulder. When he stood up, the top of his head barely reached Vexthor's chest. The size difference made several aliens laugh. "I need to get back to my duties," Jake said. "If you'll excuse me." "Running away so soon?" Vexthor asked. "I had hoped to learn more about human courage." Jake stopped walking. Something in the alien's tone made him turn around. "What would you like to know?" "I want to know how a species like yours has the nerve to send soldiers to protect its diplomats. What could you possibly do if real danger appeared? What could any human do against enemies who are bigger, stronger, and better armed?" The dining hall had grown very quiet. Even the aliens who had been eating at other tables stopped their conversations to listen. Jake looked around at all the faces watching him. Some seemed genuinely curious, others looked like they were enjoying a show, and a few appeared uncomfortable with Vexthor's behavior. "I guess we would do our best with what we have," Jake said finally. "Your best?" Vexthor repeated, making the word sound like a joke. "And what exactly is your best, little human? What can you do that I cannot do better?" Jake thought about this question for a long moment. He looked at Vexthor's scales, his claws, his massive size and obvious strength. He thought about all the alien technologies he had seen since coming aboard the ship. Energy weapons that could melt through steel, personal shields that could stop explosions, armor that could turn a soldier into a walking tank. "I suppose we adapt," Jake said at last. Vexthor threw back his head and roared with laughter. "Adapt? That is your great strength? You adapt?" He looked around at the other aliens, inviting them to share in his amusement. "Every species adapts, fool. That is how evolution works. But some of us adapted by becoming stronger, faster, more dangerous. You adapted by staying weak." Jake nodded slowly. "Maybe so, sir. I should really get going now." As he walked away, Jake could hear Vexthor talking to the other aliens, explaining why humans were not a serious military threat, and how Earth's admission to the Galactic Council had been a mistake born of pity rather than respect. The alien commander's voice followed him down the corridor, along with the laughter of his audience. Jake made his way back to the human quarters, where Captain Murphy was waiting with a concerned expression on her face. "I heard about your conversation with Vexthor," she said. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, ma'am. Just another day representing humanity among the stars." Murphy studied his face carefully. She had known Jake for 3 years and could tell when. Something was bothering him. "You know he's just trying to get under your skin, right? Don't let him bait you into doing something stupid." "Understood, ma'am. Permission to return to my duties?" "Granted. But Jake, remember what I always tell you." "Yes, ma'am. Still waters run deep." Murphy smiled. "That's right. Let him think what he wants to think. Sometimes it's better to be underestimated." Jake nodded and headed to his small cabin to clean his rifle and prepare for the next day. Outside his window, the stars moved slowly past as the Galactic Unity continued its journey toward the Peace Summit. In a few days they would arrive at Centauri Station, where the most important beings in the galaxy would gather to decide the future of countless worlds. But first, Jake had a feeling that Commander Vexthor was not done with him yet. 3 days passed quietly aboard the Galactic Unity. Jake went about his duties, checking security reports and walking patrol routes through the ship's many corridors. He tried to avoid the main dining hall during busy times, but the ship was only so big. Eventually, he would run into Commander Vexthor again. It happened in the training deck on the 4th day. Jake was there early in the morning, before most of the ship's passengers were awake. He liked the quiet time to practice his exercises and maintain his equipment. The training deck was a huge room with soft floors and walls that could change, shaped to create different obstacles and challenges. Jake set up a simple course with targets at various distances. He began with basic marksmanship, firing his rifle at targets that popped up and moved around the room. His shots were accurate but not spectacular. He hit most of his targets, missed a few, and took his time to aim carefully before each shot. After finishing with his rifle, Jake put it aside and began his morning workout. He did push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups on a bar mounted to the wall. Then he practiced basic martial arts moves, throwing punches and kicks at the air. His movements were smooth and controlled, but to most observers, they would look simple and unremarkable. "Look what I found," came a familiar voice from the entrance. Jake turned to see Vexthor walking into the training room, followed by 6 other alien warriors. They were all large and impressive, covered in natural armor or carrying advanced weapons. Jake recognized a few of them from the dining hall incident 3 days ago. "The little human is playing soldier," Vexthor continued, his voice echoing in the large room. "How cute." Jake nodded politely. "Good morning, Commander. I was just finishing up." No, please continue," Vexthor said, waving his clawed hand. "We are curious to see how humans train for war. Show us these deadly fighting techniques that make your species so dangerous." The other aliens spread out around the room, clearly settling in to watch. Jake could see the amusement on their faces. One of them, a creature that looked like a walking tree with 4 arms, was already recording with a small device. "I'm just doing basic exercises," Jake said. "Nothing special." "Basic exercises," Vexthor repeated. "Of course. I suppose your people cannot afford to train with advanced equipment like the rest of us." The alien commander walked over to a control panel on the wall and began pressing buttons. The room's walls shifted and changed, creating a complex obstacle course with moving targets, barriers, and platforms at different heights. "This is how real warriors train," Vexthor said. "Let me show you." What happened next was impressive, Jake had to admit. Vexthor moved through the obstacle course like a force of nature. He leaped over barriers that were 10 feet high, smashed through walls that would stop a truck, and fired energy blasts from weapons built into his armor that destroyed targets with pinpoint accuracy. His speed was incredible for something so large, and his strength seemed unlimited. The course that had taken Jake 20 minutes to complete on normal settings, Vexthor finished in under 3 minutes on the most difficult level. When he was done, he was not even breathing hard. "That," Vexthor announced, "is how a real warrior performs. That is why my people rule 17 star systems while yours struggles to protect one small planet." The other aliens clapped and made sounds of approval. Jake had to admit that it was an impressive display of power and skill. "Your turn, human," Vexthor said, gesturing toward the course. "Show us what Earth's finest soldier can do." Jake looked at the obstacle course. The barriers were set too high for him to jump over. The targets were moving too fast for his simple rifle to track easily. The walls were too thick for his bullets to penetrate. It was clearly designed for beings much stronger and faster than any human. "I don't think that course is set up for someone like me," Jake said. Giving up already?" Vexthor asked. "How disappointing. And here I thought humans were supposed to be brave." "I'm not giving up. I'm just saying that course is built for people with different abilities than mine." "Then what do you suggest? Should we make it easier for you? Should we lower the barriers so you can step over them instead of jumping? Should we slow down the targets so you have time to aim?" The mockery in Vexthor's voice was clear, and Jake could see the other aliens enjoying the show. He was trapped. If he refused to try the course, he would look like a coward. If he tried it and failed, he would look weak and foolish. Actually, Jake said slowly, I have a different idea. Oh? And what is that? Instead of me trying to do what you do, why don't we both try to do something together? A competition? Vexthor's eyes lit up with interest. What kind of competition? A simple combat demonstration. You and me one-on-one. No weapons that can kill, just a friendly match to show the differences between our fighting styles. The room went very quiet. The other aliens looked at each other with surprise. A few of them made what Jake assumed were sounds of disbelief in their native languages. You want to fight me? Vexthor asked, his voice full of amazement. Little human, I am twice your size and 10 times your strength. I have natural armor that can stop bullets and claws that can cut through steel. I have been trained in combat since I was a child on a world where only the strong survive. I understand, Jake said. But you asked what humans can do that you cannot do better. Maybe this is a way to find out. Vexthor stared at Jake for a long moment, clearly trying to decide if the human was serious or if this was some kind of joke. Then he began to laugh, that deep roaring sound that echoed through the training room. You have courage, I will give you that, Vexthor said. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. Very well, little human. I accept your challenge, but I warn you I will not hold back simply because you are smaller than me. I wouldn't expect you to, Jake replied. Excellent. When shall we have this demonstration? How about now? Vexthor's laughter stopped. Now? Here? Why not? Your friends are already here to watch. The room is set up for training. Unless you need time to prepare. The challenge in Jake's voice was subtle but clear. Vexthor's pride would not let him back down from a fight, especially not in front of his fellow warriors. I need no preparation. To defeat a human, Vexthor said. Very well, we will have our demonstration now. Word spread quickly through the ship's communication system. Within minutes, aliens from dozens of species began arriving at the training deck to watch the fight. The room's observation galleries filled with creatures of every shape and size, all eager to see the spectacle of a tiny human challenging a draconis warrior. Captain Murphy arrived with the other human soldiers, her face tight with worry. She pushed through the crowd until she reached Jake. What do you think you're doing? She asked quietly. My job, Jake replied. Representing humanity. By getting yourself beaten up by an alien twice your size? Maybe. Or maybe by showing them that size isn't everything. Murphy looked at Jake's calm expression and realized that arguing with him would be useless. She had seen that look before, usually right before Jake did something that seemed impossible. Just try not to get killed, she said. I don't want to explain to Earth Command why I let one of my soldiers challenge an alien warlord to single combat. The crowd was growing larger. Jake could see aliens taking pictures and recording videos. By tomorrow, this fight would be broadcast across the galaxy. If he lost badly, it would be embarrassing for all of humanity. If he lost very badly, it might affect Earth's standing in the Galactic Council. But if he won, or even if he just put up a good fight, it might change how other species viewed humans. That possibility made the risk worth taking. Vexthor was talking to his weapons, removing the deadly energy blasters and replacing them with training versions that would hurt but not kill. He kept his natural claws and armor, but Jake could see him adjusting the settings on his equipment to make it less lethal. Are you ready, little human? Vexthor called across the room. Jake checked his gear one more time. He had his combat knife, his sidearm loaded with training rounds, and his basic military uniform. Against Vexthor's scales, claws, and advanced armor, it did not look like much. Ready, Jake said. The crowd fell silent as the two fighters took their positions in the center of the room. Vexthor looked like a dragon standing upright, his scales gleaming under the lights, his claws extended, his yellow eyes focused on his opponent. Jake looked like a normal person who had wandered into the wrong place at the wrong time. Begin. When ready, announced one of the alien observers, a blue-skinned creature with 4 arms who appeared to be serving as a referee. Vexthor smiled, showing all of his sharp teeth. I will try to make this quick and painless for you, human. You have shown courage, and I respect that even if you have shown poor judgment. Jake said nothing. He simply stood in his ready position, balanced on the balls of his feet, his hands relaxed at his sides. He looked calm, almost bored, as if he were waiting for a bus rather than about to fight a 7-foot alien warrior. The silence stretched out for several seconds. Then Vexthor moved. He came forward fast, faster than most humans could react, his massive form covering the distance between them in 2 quick steps. His right arm swung in a wide arc, claws extended, aiming to end the fight with one powerful but non-lethal blow. Jake moved forward like water flowing downhill, smooth and unstoppable. Vexthor had expected the human to keep running and hiding, but instead Jake stepped inside the alien's guard and began a series of attacks that left the entire room speechless. The human's hands moved in ways that seemed impossible. He struck nerve clusters that Vexthor did not even know he had. Jake's fingers found gaps in the alien's natural armor that no opponent had ever discovered before. Each touch was precise, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Vexthor swung, his massive arm to sweep Jake away, but the human was already gone, having moved under the attack and emerged behind the alien warrior. Jake's elbow struck a pressure point just below Vexthor's armored shoulder blade, and the alien's left arm went numb for several seconds. "Impossible," whispered a blue-skinned alien in the crowd. "How does he know our anatomy?" Jake did not pause to answer. He was completely focused on the fight, his mind processing information faster than seemed humanly possible. Every move Vexthor made was being recorded, analyzed, and countered. The alien was bigger, stronger, and better armed, but Jake was learning his patterns. Vexthor spun around and tried to grab Jake with both hands, but the human ducked low and swept the alien's legs. Vexthor was too heavy to be knocked down, but the unexpected attack made him stumble backward. Jake followed up immediately, striking another pressure point that made Vexthor's right leg go weak. The crowd was making sounds of amazement in dozens of different languages. This was not what anyone had expected to see. The tiny human was not just surviving against the massive warrior, he was winning. Captain Murphy watched from the observation deck, her heart pounding. She had seen Jake fight before, but never like this. There was something different about him now, something focused and dangerous that she had never seen in all their years serving together. "How is he doing that?" asked Tony Rodriguez, one of the other human soldiers. "I don't know," Murphy replied quietly, "but I'm starting to understand why Earth Command picked him for this mission." Down in the fighting area, Vexthor was beginning to realize that he was in serious trouble. His opponent was not fighting like any warrior he had ever faced. Most fighters tried to match strength with strength, speed with speed, but Jake was fighting like something else entirely. The human moved, like he could see the future. Every attack Vexthor planned, Jake seemed to know about before it happened. Every feint, every combination, every desperate attempt to land a solid hit was anticipated and countered. But it was more than just prediction. Jake was using Vexthor's own strength against him. When the alien pushed, Jake would pull. When Vexthor charged forward, Jake would redirect that energy and send the massive warrior stumbling past his target. "What kind of fighting style is this?" Vexthor demanded, breathing hard as he tried to corner Jake again. "Human style," Jake replied calmly. This answer made no sense to Vexthor. Every species he had ever fought had their own martial arts, their own weapons, their own way of making war. But they all followed the same basic rules. The strong defeated the weak, the fast defeated the slow. The well-armed defeated the poorly armed. Jake seemed to be following completely different rules. The human attacked again, this time targeting the joints in Vexthor's armor, with strikes that felt like being hit by a hammer, despite coming from such small hands. Jake's feet moved in a complex pattern that kept him balanced and mobile, while allowing him to generate tremendous force from unexpected angles. Vexthor tried to grab Jake and use his superior size to end the fight, but Jake slipped out of his grip like smoke. The human's hands found a nerve cluster behind Vexthor's knee, and suddenly the alien's leg would not support his weight properly. The watching crowd was no longer making sounds of amusement. They were watching in stunned silence as one of the Galaxy's most feared warriors was systematically taken apart by a creature half his size. "This is not possible," said the tree-like alien who had been recording the fight. "Humans are supposed to be weak. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced abilities." Dr. Elena Rodriguez pushed through the crowd to stand next to Captain Murphy. She was a xenobiologist who had spent years studying different alien species, and she was beginning to understand what everyone was witnessing. "Look at how he moves," she said quietly to Murphy. "Look at how he thinks." "What do you mean?" "He's not trying to be stronger than Vexthor. He's not trying to be faster. He's doing something else entirely." Down in the fighting area, Jake had backed Vexthor against the wall. The alien warrior was still dangerous, but his movements were becoming clumsy and predictable. Jake had struck so many nerve points that Vexthor's natural coordination was beginning to fail him. "You fight like a coward," Vexthor snarled, trying to provoke Jake into making a mistake. "You run and hide and strike from behind. Where is your honor?" "I fight like a human," Jake replied, dodging another clumsy swing. "We don't have the luxury of fighting fair." Jake moved in close again, his hands finding new pressure points that made Vexthor's vision blur and his balance falter. The alien tried to slam Jake against the wall, but the human twisted away and used Vexthor's momentum to send him crashing into the barrier instead. The sound of Vexthor hitting the wall echoed through the training room. The massive alien slid down to one knee, shaking his head to clear it. For the first time in the fight, he looked vulnerable. Jake stepped back and waited. He was breathing hard now, sweat showing on his forehead, but he still looked calm and controlled. He could have pressed his attack and probably ended the fight, but instead he gave Vexthor time to recover. "Why do you not finish me?" Vexthor asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Because this is a demonstration, not a death match," Jake replied. "You wanted to see what humans can do. I'm showing you." Vexthor struggled back to his feet, but his movements were slow and unsteady. Jake had done something to his nervous system that was affecting his coordination and strength. The alien warrior had never experienced anything like it. "What did you do to me?" Vexthor demanded. "I used your own body against you. Every species has pressure points, nerve clusters, and weak spots. You just have to know where to look. But how could you know where mine are? You have never fought my people before." Jake smiled for the first time since the fight began. "I studied. Your people have been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years. There's a lot of medical and anatomical data available if you know where to look." The crowd was beginning to understand what they had witnessed. The human had not won through superior strength or speed. He had won through knowledge, preparation, and a kind of tactical thinking that none of them had ever seen before. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward to the edge of the observation deck. "May I explain what just happened?" she called down to the fighting area. Jake looked up and nodded. Vexthor was still trying to regain his balance, so he just listened. "What you just saw," Dr. Rodriguez announced to the crowd, "was 4 billion years of evolution in action. Humans did not evolve to be the strongest or the fastest. We evolved to be the smartest." She gestured toward Jake, who was helping Vexthor sit down against the wall. Lieutenant Harrison did not try to match Commander Vexthor's strengths. Instead, he analyzed his opponent's weaknesses and exploited them. Every move Vexthor made was being cataloged and learned from. Every attack pattern was being memorized and countered. A ripple of conversation went through the crowd as aliens began talking to each other in their various languages. But more than that, Dr. Rodriguez continued, Jake was adapting in real time. Humans are persistence hunters. On our world, we hunted animals that were bigger, stronger, and faster than us. We did it by being smarter, more patient, and more adaptable. Vexthor looked up at Jake with something that might have been respect. "You were studying me during the fight." "From the moment it started," Jake confirmed. "Every time you attacked, I learned something new about how you move, how you think, how you fight. By the end, I could predict what you were going to do before. You did it. But I have trained for decades. I have fought in hundreds of battles. And that training made you predictable. You learned patterns and stuck to them. Humans are good at recognizing patterns." Vexthor tried to stand up, but discovered that his legs were still not working properly. "How long will this last?" Nerve disruption? Maybe an hour or two. You'll be fine, but you might want to rest for a while. The massive alien warrior sat back against the wall and stared at Jake with new understanding. You could have seriously injured me. Yes. But you chose not to. Yes, why? Jake thought about this for a moment. Because you're not my enemy. You're just someone who didn't understand what humans are capable of. Now you do. The crowd was beginning to disperse, but Jake could see that many of the aliens were looking at him differently now. The mockery and amusement were gone, replaced by curiosity and something that might have been respect. Captain Murphy made her way down to the fighting area, followed by the other human soldiers and Dr. Rodriguez. That was either the smartest thing you've ever done or the stupidest, Murphy said to Jake. Maybe both, Jake replied. Vexthor was still staring at him. I have conquered 17 worlds, the alien said slowly. I have defeated every opponent I have ever faced. News of the fight spread through the galactic unity faster than light travels through space. Within hours, every being on the ship had heard about what happened in the training room. Some had watched it live, others had seen recordings, and many had heard different versions of the story from friends who claimed to have been there. The main dining hall was buzzing with conversation when Jake arrived for his evening meal. He tried to find a quiet corner table like always, but this time it was impossible. Everywhere he looked, aliens were staring at him, pointing at him, or trying to get his attention. A group of insect-like creatures from the planet Zephyria approached his table first. Their leader, who had translucent wings and compound eyes, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. Excuse me, human Jake, the alien said politely. We watched your demonstration today. We are curious about your fighting methods. It's just basic human martial arts, Jake replied, trying to eat his dinner in peace. Nothing special. But you defeated a Draconis warrior who has conquered many worlds. How is this possible? Before Jake could answer, another group joined them. These were tall, blue-skinned beings with 4 arms, who looked like they could lift heavy machinery without effort. We heard you used some kind of nerve technique, one of the blue aliens said. Our scientists are very interested in learning more about human anatomy and how you understand ours. More aliens began gathering around Jake's table. Soon he was surrounded by dozens of curious beings, all asking questions at the same time. The noise level in the dining hall rose as everyone tried to talk over each other. How did you learn our pressure points? Is it true that all humans can fight like that? Do you have special training? Are there more human warriors on your ship? Jake felt overwhelmed by all the attention. He was used to being ignored or mocked, not treated like some kind of celebrity. Captain Murphy saw what was happening and pushed through the crowd to reach him. Okay, everyone, that's enough, Murphy said firmly. Lieutenant Harrison needs to eat his meal in peace. But the aliens were not ready to give up. A creature that looked like a walking crystal formation spoke up in a voice like tinkling bells. Captain Murphy, we mean no disrespect, but we must understand what we witnessed today. This has implications for how we view human capabilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared next to Murphy, carrying a tablet computer loaded with scientific data. Actually, Rodriguez said, this might be a good opportunity to educate everyone about human evolution and biology. If Jake doesn't mind, I could explain some of the science behind what happened today. Jake looked around at all the curious faces surrounding him. These beings had spent the past week either ignoring humans completely or laughing at them. Now they wanted to learn. Maybe this was a chance to help them understand his species better. All right, Jake said, pushing his dinner tray aside. But can we move somewhere with more room? This is getting crowded. 20 minutes later, they had moved to one of the ship's lecture halls. Word had spread even further, and now aliens from every species aboard the Galactic Unity were filing in to listen. The room was designed to hold 200 beings, but Jake estimated there were at least 300 packed inside, with more trying to watch from the doorways. Dr. Rodriguez stood at the front of the room with her tablet connected to a large display screen. Jake sat in a chair nearby, still not entirely comfortable with being the center of attention. Before we begin, Rodriguez said to the crowd, I want everyone to understand that Lieutenant Harrison is not some kind of superhuman warrior. He's A normal human soldier who has been trained to use the natural advantages that evolution gave our species. She pressed a button on her tablet, and a holographic image of Earth appeared above the display screen. Humans evolved on a planet with widely varying climates and environments. Our ancestors faced threats from predators that were bigger, stronger, and faster than they were. So how did we survive? The image changed to show early humans hunting a large animal across a vast plain. We became persistence hunters. We didn't try to outrun our prey or overpower it. Instead, we followed it for hours, sometimes days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. We used tools, teamwork, and most importantly, our ability to think and adapt. A furry alien with 6 legs raised one of its hands. But how does this relate to fighting? Hunting animals is not the same as combat. Actually, it's very similar, Rodriguez replied. The same mental processes that made humans successful hunters also make us effective fighters. We observe our opponents, learn their patterns, and adapt our strategy accordingly. She gestured toward Jake. When Lieutenant Harrison fought Commander Vexthor, he wasn't trying to be stronger or faster. He was using the same hunting instincts that kept our species alive for millions of years. The display screen now showed a diagram of human brain structure compared to several alien species. Notice the size of the human prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and problem solving. It's proportionally larger than most other species. We literally evolved to be better at thinking through complex problems. A Draconis warrior in the audience stood up. Jake recognized him as one of Vexthor's friends from the training room. But thinking is not enough in real combat, the alien said. You need strength, armor, weapons. How can humans compete with species that have all of these advantages? Rodriguez smiled. That's exactly the right question. Jake, would you mind demonstrating? Jake looked uncertain. Demonstrate what? Show them how you knew where to strike Commander Vexthor. Explain your thought process. Jake stood up reluctantly and walked to the front of the room. He looked out at hundreds of alien faces, all watching him intently. I guess it started when I first came aboard this ship, Jake began. I knew I might have to work with or protect beings from species I'd never encountered before. So I studied. Studied what? Asked the blue alien who had approached him at dinner. Everything I could find about alien anatomy, physiology, and biology. The ship's medical database has information about every species in the Galactic Council. I spent my free time learning about nerve clusters, pressure points, and vulnerable areas. The crowd murmured with interest. This was not what they had expected to hear. But more than that, Jake continued. I studied Commander Vexthor specifically after our first encounter. I watched how he moved, how he carried himself, where his natural armor was thickest and where it might be weaker. You were planning to fight him? Asked one of the crystal beings. I was planning for the possibility. Humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Dr. Rodriguez brought up a new image on the screen, showing the anatomical structure of a Draconis warrior. This is what Jake was working with, she explained. Notice the nerve clusters here, here, and here. They're protected by armor, but if you know exactly where to strike and how much pressure to apply, you can disrupt the nervous system temporarily. But how did he know this would work? Asked the insect-like alien from Zephyria. He had never tested it before. Jake thought about this question. I didn't know for certain, but humans are good at making educated guesses based on incomplete information. We call it intuition, but it's really just rapid pattern recognition. Pattern recognition? When I looked at Commander Vexthor's anatomy, I could see similarities to other species I had studied. I could also see similarities to Earth animals that have similar body structures. My brain automatically compared all this information and made predictions about what might work. The crowd was silent as they processed this information. Finally, a tree-like alien with multiple limbs spoke up. So you're saying that humans can analyze and adapt to any opponent, even ones they've never faced before? Within limits, Jake replied. We're not magic. But yes, we're very good at figuring out how things work and finding ways to exploit weaknesses. Dr. Rodriguez added, and this isn't limited to combat. Humans use the same cognitive processes for everything. Problem solving, tool making, social interaction. Technology development. We're generalists rather than specialists. A small, bird-like creature near the back of the room raised its wing. Is this why humans have been so successful in space exploration despite being a young species? Exactly, Rodriguez said. Most species develop one or two major advantages and rely on those. Humans develop the ability to adapt to any situation. When we encountered space travel, we didn't try to compete with species that had better technology. We learned from them, borrowed their innovations, and combined them in new ways. The Draconis, warrior who had asked the earlier question, stood up again. Commander Vex Thor said that humans fight without honor, that you use tricks and deception instead of honest combat. Jake considered this carefully before answering. I think honor means different things to different species. For humans, honor comes from protecting others and completing your mission, not from fighting in a particular style. But you used Commander Vex Thor's strength against him. You didn't face him directly. No, I didn't. Because that would have been stupid. When you're smaller and weaker than your opponent, you use every advantage you can find. That's not dishonor. That's survival. Rodriguez brought up a new image showing human evolutionary history. Remember, humans spent millions of years as prey animals as much as predators. Centauri Station was the largest artificial structure Jake had ever seen. It hung in space like a giant metal flower, with dozens of arms reaching out in all directions. Each arm was big enough to dock ships the size of entire cities. The station was home to millions of beings from hundreds of different worlds, all working together to keep the galaxy's government running smoothly. The galactic unity slowed down as it approached its assigned docking port. Jake stood at the observation window, in the human quarters, watching the massive station grow larger and larger. In a few hours, he would be walking through corridors where the most powerful beings in the galaxy made decisions that affected billions of lives. Nervous? Captain Murphy asked, joining him at the window. A little, Jake admitted. This is bigger than anything I expected when I signed up to be a soldier. You've handled everything else pretty well so far. Jake thought about the events of the past week. The confrontation with Vex Thor, the demonstration fight, the lecture hall full of curious aliens. It all seemed like a strange dream. Captain, can I ask you something? Sure. Did you know this was going to happen? When Earth Command picked me for this mission, did they know I might end up fighting alien warriors and giving science lectures? Murphy was quiet for a moment. I think they knew you were the kind of person who could adapt to unexpected situations. That's what humans do best, right? We figure things out as we go. A soft chime sounded through the ship's communication system, followed by an announcement that they had successfully docked with Centauri Station. The Galactic Unity's long journey was finally over. Over the next few hours, passengers began leaving the ship to attend various meetings and events across the station. Jake's job was to stay close to the human diplomatic team and make sure they remained safe during their visit. But as they walked through the station's main corridors, Jake noticed something different about how other beings were reacting to their presence. Instead of ignoring the human delegation or looking at them with mild curiosity, aliens were stopping to stare. Some pointed and whispered to their companions. Others actually approached to ask questions. Are you the humans from the transport ship? Asked a tall, green-skinned alien with 4 eyes. We heard about the demonstration fight. Word travels fast, Dr. Rodriguez said with a smile. The story is being shared on communication networks across the station. Many species are very interested in learning more about human capabilities. This pattern continued throughout their first day on the station. Everywhere the human delegation went, they encountered aliens who had heard about Jake's fight with Vex Thor. The story had grown in the telling, with some versions claiming that Jake had defeated multiple opponents or used mysterious human technologies. I think you're becoming famous, Captain Murphy told Jake as they walked to their third meeting of the day. I don't want to be famous, I just want to do my job. Too late for that. Look around. Jake looked and realized that their small group was being followed by dozens of curious aliens. They were keeping a respectful distance, but clearly wanted to observe the humans in action. The most important meeting of their visit was scheduled for the second day. Ambassador Patricia Williams, the head of Earth's diplomatic mission, was supposed to address the Galactic Council's military committee about humanity's potential contributions to galactic defense. Jake and the other human soldiers were assigned to provide security for the meeting, which was being held in one of the station's largest conference rooms. When they arrived, Jake was surprised to see that the room was completely packed, not just with military committee members, but with representatives from dozens of species who normally had nothing to do with military affairs. "Why are there so many people here?" Jake asked Captain Murphy. "I think they want to see the humans who surprised everyone on the transport ship," Murphy replied. Ambassador Williams gave her presentation about Earth's military capabilities, defensive technologies, and potential contributions to galactic security. It was a good presentation, full of facts and figures and detailed analyses. But Jake could see that the audience was not really paying attention to the charts and graphs. They were watching him. After the ambassador finished her formal remarks, the committee chairman opened the floor for questions. Jake expected them to ask about human technology or military doctrine. Instead, the first question came from a reptilian alien who looked very similar to Commander Vexthor. "Ambassador Williams, we have heard reports about a demonstration that took place during your journey here. Could you tell us more about this incident?" The ambassador looked confused. "I'm sorry. I'm not sure what you're referring to." "A human soldier apparently defeated a Draconis warrior in single combat. We would like to understand how this was possible." All eyes in the room turned toward Jake, who felt his face grow hot with embarrassment. He had hoped that the story would stay aboard the transport ship, but apparently nothing stayed secret on a space station. Ambassador Williams looked at Captain Murphy, who nodded slightly. "Lieutenant Harrison," the ambassador said, "would you mind explaining what happened?" Jake stood up slowly. He was wearing his dress uniform for the formal meeting, and he felt very small surrounded by hundreds of alien dignitaries and military officers. "It was just a training demonstration," Jake said. "Commander Vexthor and I sparred to show the differences between our fighting styles." "And you won this sparring match?" asked another alien. "I was able to use some techniques that were effective against his particular anatomy and fighting style." A blue-skinned alien with 4 arms stood up in the audience. "Lieutenant Harrison, many of us have been in contact with our home governments about this incident. Our leaders are very interested in understanding human military capabilities." Jake looked at Ambassador Williams, who gestured for him to continue. "I'm just one soldier," Jake said. "I don't represent all of humanity's military capabilities. But your techniques, your methods of analysis and adaptation, are these common among human fighters?" Jake thought about this question carefully. "The specific techniques I used required study and preparation. But the general approach, learning about your opponent and adapting your strategy accordingly, that's pretty standard human thinking." The room erupted in quiet conversations as aliens discussed this information with each other. Jake could hear dozens of different languages being spoken at once. The reptilian alien who had asked the first question stood up again. "Lieutenant Harrison, I should introduce myself. I am General Kexmar of the Draconis Imperial Fleet. Commander Vexthor is one of my best officers." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had humiliated the general's subordinate in front of hundreds of witnesses. This could cause serious diplomatic problems for Earth. "General, I want to apologize if I caused any offense," Jake began. But General Kexmar held up his hand to stop him. "There is no need for apology. Commander Vexthor contacted me after your demonstration. He told me that he learned more about combat in one day than he had in the previous year." The room went quiet again. "He has requested permission to study human military tactics and training methods. Several of my other commanders have made the same request." Ambassador Williams leaned forward with interest. "Are you saying that the Draconis Empire would like to establish military exchanges with Earth?" "We would like to learn from each other," General Kexmar replied. "Your Lieutenant Harrison has shown us that there are many different ways to approach warfare. We believe that combining our strengths with human adaptability could benefit both our peoples." Over the next hour, similar requests came from representatives of a dozen other species. They wanted to exchange military advisors, share training techniques, and learn more about human problem-solving methods. Jake sat in amazement as he listened to Ambassador Williams negotiate preliminary agreements for cooperation that would have been impossible just a week earlier. Earth had come to the Peace Summit hoping to be accepted as a minor partner in galactic affairs. Instead, they were being courted as valuable allies by some of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. When the meeting finally ended, Jake found himself surrounded by alien military officers who wanted to shake his hand and ask questions about human combat training. Commander Vexthor was among them, having arrived on a fast courier ship the day before. "Human Jake," Vexthor said, offering his hand in the human custom he had learned. "I owe you a debt of gratitude." "For what?" "For teaching me that strength comes in many forms. My people have spent centuries relying on our natural advantages. You showed me that intelligence and adaptability can be just as powerful as claws and armor. I'm glad something good came out of our fight. More good than you know. The Draconis Empire has been fighting the same enemies using the same tactics for hundreds of years. We win most of our battles, but we never truly defeat our opponents. They always come back stronger." Vexthor looked around at the diverse crowd of aliens who were still discussing the implications of what they had learned. "But now we understand that there are other ways to think about conflict. Ways that might finally bring real peace to our regions of space." As the crowd began to disperse, Captain Murphy joined Jake and Vexthor. "So what happens now?" Murphy asked.